It is no secret that student debt in America often becomes a crushing burden. In contrast, many European countries invest directly in higher education, freeing students from financial shackles. This video tells the true stories behind these two different systems and what they mean for those who go through them. Imagine walking onto your university campus without owing a dime for tuition. That is reality for millions of students across Europe. Meanwhile, in America, graduating with $30,000 or more in debt is routine. These stories are not exaggerations or hypotheticals. They are based on real policies and outcomes that shape millions of lives each year. Here is the story of how each system came to be and why the gap between them matters.
One exception we make is student loans. And I ask whether that is wise national policy. People that borrow to invest in their education, that we do not forgive. It seems like something for Congress to consider, that's all. It's none of the Fed's business, really. Ultimately, it's not a big macroeconomic thing, but I've said it before, I said it again.
After World War II, many European nations rebuilt their economies with the belief that higher education belonged to everyone. Public universities in Germany, Norway, Denmark, and Finland became tuition-free. Students paid only minimal administrative fees. Attendance soared. Today in Germany, tuition at public universities remains free for both domestic and international students. In Norway, every student receives both free tuition and a maintenance grant, completely removing financial barriers to education. These programs are funded by taxes and managed by national governments, reflecting a view that education benefits the whole society. That view contrasts sharply with the American model. In the United States, universities treat buyers of education as consumers. Tuition skyrocketed. In-state public universities charged tens of thousands in yearly tuition. Private universities demanded even more. Students and families financed this by borrowing. The result, 43 million borrowers now collectively owe around $1.6 trillion. Students do not simply take loans. They devote decades of their lives to repaying them. Weddings are delayed, home purchases postponed, career choices are skewed toward high-paying fields simply to service debt. Mental health surveys repeatedly show high levels of stress, anxiety, and depression directly tied to student indebtedness. What led to this transformation in America? The government shifted college funding toward student loans instead of institutional funding. Federal programs like the Stafford Loan and PLUS loans grew explosively. Pell Grants remained available but covered only a fraction of tuition. As a result, universities increased fees to match the federal dollars flowing in. Lenders originate billions in loans every year. The cycle fueled colleges to invest in brand and amenities, luxury dormitories, gyms, and career centers to attract paying students. Soon, universities competed in prestige rather than affordability. That cycle also created massive inequalities. Students from wealthy backgrounds could attend top universities debt-free or through parental support. Many low-income students borrowed heavily or avoided college altogether. Mid-range families shouldered the heaviest debt burden, unable to pay up front but not wealthy enough for scholarships. Today, the average borrower graduates owing over $30,000. Black students carry higher average debts, reflecting ongoing racial wealth disparities. These debts follow graduates well into their 40s and 50s. In contrast, European students typically graduate debt-free or with small state loans repaid on income-based schedules. They enter the workforce unburdened, ready to buy homes, start families, or even launch businesses. Despite features like free tuition, Europe faces crowding in university classrooms. Nations like Scotland have capped class sizes because public budgets cannot scale instantly. Universities may lack cutting-edge facilities found in elite U.S. institutions, but at scale, these countries sustain high literacy, skilled workforces, and steady economic growth without piling personal debt on young adults. The debate is whether access or elite performance is more important. Let's look at the numbers. In Germany, around 2.5 million students attend public universities for free. In Norway, student support grants often total over $1,000 per month. In contrast, The average American student borrows around $7,000 per year. Over 4 years, that translates to $28,000 in loans, plus interest. Second loans for living expenses often double that total. Come graduation, many American students sit with debt between $30,000 and $50,000. Some borrow $100,000 or more. That debt resurfaces in poor credit scores, access to mortgages, and delays in making long-term financial decisions. The cost is not only financial. Mental health data from recent years demonstrates that indebtedness contributes to depression, anxiety, and even suicidal thoughts among young adults. Many feel trapped, studying harder for a diploma that becomes a financial cage. Meanwhile, European students report significantly lower stress over post-university life. They enter the workforce without the burden of debt and frequently become committed public servants, researchers, or entrepreneurs who benefit from the freedom. How do the systems evaluate value? Europe treats education as a social investment. Society benefits. America treats education as a marketplace commodity. Individuals pay for branding and prestige. That individual payment creates competition, leading to world-class research and facilities, but leaving most students in financial hardship. The trade-off: elite excellence for some, broad access for many. Statistical outcomes reinforce the difference. Europe's net college enrollment rate is often higher among low-income students than America's enrollment and completion rates. Once enrolled, European students are less likely to drop out due to financial strain. In the U.S., nearly 40% of students fail to complete their degree within 6 years, many bowing out because they can't afford to continue. The political roots run deep. Country after country in Europe sees long-term political consensus around education as a public good. In the U.S., public funding fluctuates, and federal policy has changed over the decades toward privatization. Attempts to reinstate free tuition at community colleges or limit student interest rates face fierce pushback from institutions and lenders. The result: students remain the ones who pay in full. But not all American policymakers agree. Some states now offer free 2-year college. Experiments at public universities have reduced tuition for in-state students. Income-based repayment systems have entered the national conversation. Even debt forgiveness plans have been proposed. Yet critics warn such measures threaten credit markets and fiscal discipline. Supporters argue reforms will free generations from financial bondage and boost the economy. Another significant difference lies in how repayment structures function after graduation. In the United States, student loans often come with fixed repayment schedules that begin shortly after graduation, regardless of the borrower's employment status or income level. Deferments and income-driven repayment options exist, but are often difficult to access or come with penalties and accumulated interest. Failure to repay loans on time leads to compounding interest, damaged credit scores, wage garnishments, and in extreme cases, loss of professional licenses. The consequences follow borrowers for decades, sometimes into retirement. In contrast, countries like the United Kingdom, Germany, and the Netherlands implement income-contingent repayment models. Graduates begin repaying loans only once their income crosses a minimum threshold. Monthly payments are automatically adjusted based on earnings, and in many cases, any outstanding debt is forgiven after a set number of years. This model minimizes default risk and aligns financial obligations with real-world capacity to pay. Borrowers are not penalized for choosing lower-paying professions or facing unemployment. The repayment structure reflects a broader philosophy. Higher education is an investment in the workforce, not a private liability. It allows graduates to participate in the economy immediately and contribute to social programs through taxes instead of loan repayments. This distinction is a defining feature of how different societies structure financial risk in relation to educational access and opportunity. Institutional priorities also differ sharply between the two systems. American universities compete heavily in rankings, fundraising, athletics, and amenities. They invest in luxury dormitories, large marketing departments, and expansive campuses to attract students and donors. Endowments often grow into the billions. But this wealth rarely results in tuition reductions for average students. Resources are channeled toward research prestige and capital projects rather than direct affordability. In Europe, universities operate with narrower financial margins and focus on educational outcomes rather than competitive branding. Admissions processes are also less commercialized. In many European countries, spots are awarded based on academic performance or placement tests, rather than holistic reviews that consider extracurriculars or essays. This reduces pressure on students to build expensive portfolios of experience just to gain admission. Europe's model shows what is possible when society takes responsibility for education. American students face difficult trade-offs: prestige, debt, stress. It all comes back to values. Do we strive to lift every student or spotlight just a few? Which system speaks to you? Should education be a universal right or a private investment? Share your story below. Like this video and subscribe for more honest stories about how systems shape lives. Thanks for watching.